Welcome to AccuWeather's Ask the Experts. I'm your host, Jeff Cornish. Whether you nerd out on it or just want to know more about it, we talk to some of the best minds in meteorology, space, and science to get answers on everything you've wanted to ask. And in this episode, we want to talk to the people who help us tell the story of weather here on our network and AccuWeather's digital properties. And our AccuWeather reporters are our eyes in the field, and they give us first-hand information of what's happening during some of the biggest weather events, and you see their footage live. We have a team of reporters that travel across the country to get information on the weather that impacts you. And today we're going to be finding out what it's like to be one of those reporters. And joining us as our expert today to do that is AccuWeather National Weather Reporter Bill Wadell. Bill, thanks for being here with us.
Jeff, it's nice being here indoors with some lights.
I know.
Not used to it.
Sometimes it's not fair because we have climate control in the studio and you're out there in the middle of the worst that nature sends our way. But it's good talking to you. And Bill has over 15 years experience reporting, and he's covered everything from winter storms to wildfires and hurricanes, sometimes all in the matter of just a week or two. So, Bill, tell us about the role that you've had here over the past 5 years at AccuWeather.
Yeah, absolutely. I started off based in Texas. We would travel just about anywhere where the big story would be. So we work with the team here at AccuWeather's Global Weather Center, getting ahead of the big storms, the hurricane landfalls, and we coordinate with our team of forecasters, the meteorologists here. We work well with the long-range team as well, super helpful with our plans because we know, especially in recent years, some of these severe weather events, they've been back-to-back. They've been pretty busy, and they can be in different parts of the country. So being a traveling weather correspondent, trying to stay ahead of those storms and be in the right spot at the right time can be a little bit challenging, but our team here helps us with that.
Well, you do it well, and we're glad to have a great team here at AccuWeather. So let's get started. How did you get interested in wanting to cover some of these big storms, and how did you get interested in the weather in the first place?
It's just been fascinating. I mean, weather impacts everybody, whether you want it to or not. And a lot of times weather can be really enjoyable for people heading to the beach, doing snowstorms. Obviously, weather can be tremendously impactful, and it can change your entire life, uproot families in just a matter of minutes. And growing up, I was just fascinated by the weather. I grew up in northeastern Pennsylvania. Obviously, with these jobs, we travel around a lot, so I got to experience weather in different parts of the country. And when I was able to join AccuWeather in 2019, it was just a remarkable experience. And weather, not just impactful, but just helping people plan their days, plan their weeks. It's something that we want everyone to be prepared for. And we really don't want people being caught off guard. So it's just one of those jobs. It's neat. We get to travel. We get to meet a lot of really interesting people. And we get to help these families.
And in your earlier career as a news reporter, sometimes you hit on weather. Other times it might be crime or other things. So what about weather is different than covering traditional news in local news sense?
News was tough. Anybody who works in journalism knows that news can be really difficult. And that's what I gravitated towards after, a decade plus of covering news when that opportunity came up for weather. News, you've got people doing difficult things, really tough circumstances. It's really hard to explain things to people sometimes. Whereas the weather, one of those things that impacts everyone. And there are so many incredible stories, survival stories, people helping out complete strangers. That's what I gravitated towards with weather, really, when it brings out the good in people.
That's very good. And is there an assignment or storm that stands out to you as most memorable among your years here at AccuWeather?
That's tough. After being on the road for a few years, traveled to 35 different states here for AccuWeather. One of the most memorable experiences was covering a snowstorm in Binghamton, New York, not far from where I grew up. Obviously, when you travel the country, you get to see a lot, but it's always neat when you have the opportunity to go home, to run into people that you haven't seen in a long time. And covering snowstorms, covering blizzards, that can be a lot of fun. Obviously, there's a lot of impacts. We see highways shut down. You never want to see people out there stranded. But most times winter storms aren't as dangerous or as impactful as really bad severe weather, hurricanes. Those are always tough to cover because people are going to lose things. People get hurt. But with a winter storm, you often see people out there enjoying it, having some fun. They can be a lot of fun to cover as long as you have the proper clothing.
I believe that. And, sometimes the things that you as a viewer may not see, we wear these earpieces and microphones are sometimes kind of hidden on our tie or whatever. But that technology is tough to manage when you're out in the conditions. We have it easy in the studio. So when it comes to the nasty, harsh conditions, extreme heat or cold, water is such an issue with any of this equipment. And also safety measures that you have to keep in mind for yourself. What are some of the challenges regarding the elements that you're facing?
Yeah, that's always a top priority. It's just trying to keep our equipment dry, prevent it from being broken. Because when we're out there in a storm, we've got a story to tell. We want to update people. We can't do that if our electronics get fried out in the rain or the snow. So we improvise a lot of times. We've got equipment, but when you're recovering a hurricane for days on end, things get soaked. So you can see here in the video, extra gas. We use internet satellite kits. We've used solar panels.
It's impressive.
Yeah, just to power our equipment. You can see different bags, trash bags. We'll layer, because that's the key. With hurricanes, with storms, when you're out in the water, when you're out in the rain, you need that opportunity for things to dry off. That's Mike Scantlin, one of the chasers that I've worked with over the years. You'll also see video of my wife, Stephanie. She also helps behind the camera with some of our live coverage, especially during the hurricane season. But yeah, a lot of work just to keep things dry and backups, a lot of backups, because things do get soaked.
And I know that if you are covering a major hurricane after landfall, you can't just recharge your batteries that night in a hotel. There may not be power there, so you have to be self-sufficient. And I know that's part of the game. Have you ever felt like your life was in danger during any of these weather events?
Again, we treat safety top priority all the time. That said, my first few storm chasing trips, when I first transitioned full time into chasing storms with AccuWeather, yeah, there were some storms down in Alabama I will never forget. Tornado chasing with some of the chasers down there who are experienced, who've been doing this for years and decades. When I first started out, we teamed up with them. We would travel in convoys, and I remember this storm specifically. Alabama, March 2021. This video is spread up, but you could see there was a tornado that dropped down and crossed the road right in front of us, taking down some trees. You never get used to experiencing a tornado. Your heart is always pounding, but especially those first few times when you've never seen anything like that before. Yeah, it definitely can be scary, but that's why it's so great that we're teamed up with experienced storm chasers, field meteorologists, people who have been through this before, kind of to teach the new guys and gals the ropes, because you never want to become the story. We want to cover the story. You never want to become part of the story.
Right. And you did mention teamwork, a big team that works together, whether you're with other chasers or whether you're here with us at AccuWeather, from the control room to the facilities, keeping the floor swept and all that stuff. You have worked with your wife and also some other critters who have actually come along for the ride. So how has that worked, and how long has your wife been involved with covering storms with you?
Well, like a lot of people, when 2019, 2020 rolled around, the pandemic changed everything, whether you wanted it to or not. And you can see the hound dogs in the photo. For us, being based down in Texas with such an active hurricane season during 2020, also the challenges with the pandemic, that's when we decided we're going to get a van. Steph's going to be on the road with us, helping to cover these storms. And when it wasn't too severe, sometimes the hound dogs would come along for the ride. Obviously, with really impactful storms, we made sure they were safe with family or friends. Didn't bring them on the road. But again, traveling to 35 different states, a lot of it on the road, those hound dogs have experienced a lot. You could see them back there in the back seat of one of our cars. They have, I don't know how many dogs have seen both a tornado, EF3, been through smaller hurricanes, but yeah, they've had quite a journey.
That's great. That is impressive. And, we kind of stuck our toe into one of these questions, but we want to dig a little bit deeper. Going to our first viewer question now. It comes from Tyler in North Carolina. So Tyler writes, what's the difference between covering hard news and weather when it comes to crime and court cases as opposed to the weather? Seems that weather's a little less polarizing most of the time, right?
Yeah.
We want humanity to do well, and there's this sense of people coming together behind a storm. But in your mind, what's the biggest difference between covering these two things?
A lot of times safety. People think covering weather is incredibly dangerous, and we're able to control the scenario, make sure we're in a safe location, coordinate with crews. Covering news, that doesn't always happen. Sometimes when you're near the streets, when you're in the neighborhoods, you never know what's going to happen. But when we work with such an incredible team here at AccuWeather, the experts, the technology, the supercomputer modeling, the satellites, we have a good idea of what's coming. So when we coordinate with our team, we're able to stay one or two steps ahead of the storm. Covering news, sometimes you have no clue what's going to come out of left field.
That's very true. And sometimes when news breaks, it's a surprise. With weather, we try to stay ahead of that. That's the forecast aspect of things. But you never know when the scanner traffic is going to go sideways in a local newsroom. Bill, you've had a lot of experiences traveling the nation. You mentioned 35 states. Is there an area that you have visited as an AccuWeather national weather reporter that you would have never been to otherwise?
I would say the Southwest. There are so many incredible places throughout this country. I had a bucket list before I started this job. Never thought I would be hitting 35 different states, see all these different places. And that's what's nice about some of these road trips. Yeah, we fly to some assignments. Sometimes you don't have enough time to drive. You've got to fly. But we'll drive when often we can. And that gives us the opportunity to stop, to see these state parks, to see these petrified forests and all these state and national parks and these little towns off the side roads. But America's Southwest and the Pacific Northwest, absolutely beautiful.
Coming up later in Weather-Wise, we're going to debunk some popular tornado myths in our segment, Is This Really a Thing? We got some good ones here coming up in just a bit. But next, Bill's going to share his most memorable storms to cover. And we're also answering more of your questions. And Bill's fun to talk to because if you talk about any location on the map, he's got a story there and a storm to relate that to. All that when Ask the Experts returns. Welcome back to AccuWeather's Ask the Experts. I'm your host, Jeff Cornish, and we've been talking to Bill Wadell as we're in this episode finding out what it's like to be out in the field covering the biggest weather events up close and personal. And AccuWeather national weather reporter Bill has been sharing some of his experiences. He's been with us for about 5 years here at AccuWeather. He's been a reporter for over 15. So, Bill, in this segment, I thought it might be cool to go back and look at and talk about some of the top weather stories in your mind, maybe the top 3 that you've chosen as your most memorable during your time here at AccuWeather. And we can have a little fun with this, maybe by counting these down here. Everybody loves a countdown.
Sure.
Yeah, from 3 to 1.
And it's tough narrowing down, 35 different states worth of assignments into a top 3. I'm going to start the top 3. We'll start with number 3 in Oklahoma.
Okay.
And we know Oklahoma's got some monster storms out there. And this was a tornado chase with storm chaser Mike Scantlin. Blanchard, Oklahoma, April 2023. Looking at that video, I will never forget seeing this storm swirling above us. And Oklahoma has incredible hail. There's Mike right there. And you might remember this video. A lot of people saw this, the hail that smashed the windshield, about a 3-inch in diameter hailstone. Thankfully, that safety glass worked. But that's something you got to be prepared for in that part of the country. That's why we tell people do not drive during these severe storms. You could see within a matter of minutes after that hailstorm hit our windshield, it dropped a tornado right in Cole, hit homes. This was one of those tornado outbreaks through the night in pink. You could see the lightning lighting up the sky, and unfortunately places here like Shawnee, Oklahoma getting hit by tornadoes. But that was a chase. We saw at least 5 or 6 tornadoes just in that single day. Storm chasing during the day is tough. At night in Oklahoma, incredibly dangerous. That's why it's so important when we cover these storms and stories to be with experts, to be with people who've done this before. But yeah, the lightning, the thunder, the hail and tornadoes in Oklahoma, unlike any place else on the earth.
Very wild. And to be there right after, I've been to tornado damage an hour or 2 after, but never right after. That's a pretty precarious spot to be. And I'm sure a little eerie is trying to determine if people are okay or not.
Absolutely, and we do take the time. On that chase, we stopped several times, jumped out of the vehicle, checking on people in the homes or see if, sometimes debris gets stuck on top of storm shelters. A lot of people down there in Oklahoma have them, which is great, but we got to make sure they're okay and make sure they have a way to get out.
Okay. Well, what do you have as your number 2, second most memorable story?
Number 2, some of the wildfires out in California that I will never forget. It was the glass fire out in Napa Valley. 2020, as you remember, that was a busy year in America for extreme weather. And being in such a picturesque area, so many beautiful vineyards, wineries, absolutely heartbreaking just to see how fast those fires would move, how just a slight shift in wind direction would be obvious. It's like horrifically devastating. We saw a school that burned down. This was a neighborhood where homes burned down, and thankfully most people were able to get to safety. That's why our advanced warnings, telling people about these hazards and threats, getting them out of harm's way, because with storms a lot of times you could shelter, you could get to a basement, get to a safe place. Wildfires, they're just one of those extreme hazards where you need to get out of the way as fast as possible. I have a whole new respect for wildfires after covering the glass fire.
I believe that. And you've seen this and experienced this like 99% of us, thankfully, never do. Well, as we go down the list here, we'll start the drum roll. What was your number 1 most memorable weather story, at least to this point?
That was a tough one, but again, 2020, that intense hurricane season, Hurricane Laura down in Louisiana, that was just an unforgettable hurricane season. Back-to-back storms and landfalls in Louisiana. That was tough. But Laura knocked out windows in our vehicle. This was when we had a chance to go out after dark in the eye of the storm when those winds calmed down. You only have a few minutes to be out there assessing the damage. And of course, our hotel took damage. Windows, doors blown out. Where I was sheltering, we had water coming into the hotel room. We ended up in the stairwell with families who ended up stuck there. And of course, these were pandemic days, so we had other things to worry about on top of the storm. But the power of the wind, billboards being knocked down to homes, and you can't forget that high rise in Lake Charles, Louisiana, with all of the windows blown out and all of the flooding. That was a really tough storm to cover. I will never forget the intense heat and humidity right after that hurricane. People, volunteers, contractors, first responders, all dealing with really tough heat and humidity after the storm. But a lot of good came out of this. A lot of people across Louisiana came out to help their neighbors, help strangers. And that's one of the experiences I wish people got to see a little bit more of the good with these storms. And we love sharing those stories. But these volunteers that come in, some of them will drive hundreds, if not 1,000 miles away to help these families after seeing the impacts from these storms. So a lot of heartache. I know that community, they're still working to fully recover, but there's a lot of good in these storms when people come together.
Well, we have time for our next viewer question. Bill, your top three lists, they're very memorable. I remember covering them with you, but from the comfort of the studio. So this one comes from Debbie in Virginia. Debbie writes, do you have a favorite type of weather event to cover? Whether it be hurricanes, blizzards, tornadoes. We don't send you out in partly to mostly sunny most of the time.
No, it doesn't work that way.
Like pool safety or something like that.
Yeah, it is incredible to see Mother Nature in action, to see those tornadoes forming off in the distance, ideally in a rural area in a cornfield where it's not going to hurt anyone. But when it comes to storms and covering weather, again, those winter storms and the blizzards, there's just something about it. There's something about people bundling up, getting the kids out there. And again, this was Binghamton, New York. This was my wife's first experience, I believe, 32, 33 inches at least of snow out there in that part of Binghamton, New York. And she had a struggle getting through those snow drifts. I'm about 6'3". My wife's a foot or so shorter than me.
Yeah.
She was working the camera at the time. And these neighbors, we saw folks out there just shoveling. And it was tough because we had to shout through the snowdrifts. We couldn't reach them, and found out this lady, her husband was out of town. She was literally snowed in her home.
Wow.
And we were able to talk with her, make it through the snowdrifts, and one of her neighbors came through. Again, strangers helping strangers, came through with that snowblower to help her out.
Wow, pretty amazing. Well, Bill, we hate to report that our time has run out, so thanks for making some time for us here in your busy schedule as we look forward to seeing you help us tell the story of the future as well. Coming up next, we're going to tackle some popular tornado myths in our Weather-Wise segment. Is this really a thing? We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back to AccuWeather's Ask the Experts. I'm your host, Jeff Cornish. It's time for Weather-Wise, and in this version we ask, is this really a thing? In other words, are common ideas about weather fact or fiction? Let's begin with this. You've heard that tornado alleys in the Great Plains. Was this really a thing? The area people call Tornado Alley used to be confined to Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, a little bit of Nebraska. In recent decades, we've learned that there are about as many tornadoes farther east as well, including in Tennessee, Kentucky, and parts of Mississippi and Alabama. Better radar data now pinpoints areas where storm damage can be surveyed after the storm, giving meteorologists a more comprehensive idea of where tornadoes occur. Changes in climate also may be responsible for this eastward expansion. Experts say warmer air moving northward from the Gulf of Mexico is one reason for that eastward expansion of Tornado Alley. Next up, highway overpasses are not completely safe during tornadoes. Well, that's true. Stopping under a bridge for shelter from a tornado is very dangerous. Flying debris can accelerate under an overpass as wind is channeled through the narrow passageway. With lower visibility during a storm, other travelers can easily plow into a crowd of stopped vehicles under the overpass, so it really is a thing. Highway overpasses are not tornado safe. Finally, tornadoes can't happen in the mountains. Well, tornadoes can actually form in the mountains. They've been observed in the Appalachians and even at elevations up to 12,000 feet in the Rocky Mountains. So this is not a thing because, yes, tornadoes can happen in the mountains. Thanks so much for joining us here on AccuWeather's Ask the Experts. I'm Jeff Cornish. Don't forget, when you have a question about weather, space, or science, you can write us or send us a video question at asktheexperts@AccuWeather.com. You can also call 888-566-6606.